Ethan had always been his father's shadow, living under the weight of expectations that seemed impossible to meet. Richard Langston, a man of rigid standards and lofty ambitions, had never truly believed in anyone's potential outside his own carefully constructed vision, especially not in women. So, when Ethan introduced his fiancée, Clara, a self-made entrepreneur from a modest background, his father's skepticism was immediate and harsh. Clara was bright, determined, and fiercely independent, but to Richard, she seemed inexperienced, naive, and frankly, unworthy of the Langston name. From their first meeting, the tension in the room was palpable. Clara offered polite smiles and steady composure, but Richard's disapproving gaze never wavered. He questioned her career choices, mocked her modest upbringing, and even insinuated that Ethan might be making a mistake. "Ethan, you've worked hard to build your future. Don't throw it away on someone who hasn't proven herself in the real world," Richard said, his voice sharp, tinged with condescension. Clara remained quiet, letting Ethan speak on her behalf, but the sting of his words lingered, gnawing at the edges of the evening. Despite the hostility, Clara refused to let Richard's doubts undermine her confidence. She had spent years building her tech startup from scratch, facing rejection after rejection, learning more from failures than most people did from success. She knew her worth, and though she had yet to earn Richard's respect, she was determined to show him, not through arguments or defiance, but by letting her achievements speak for themselves. Ethan, caught between loyalty to his father and admiration for Clara, struggled to mediate without escalating tensions. The first major test came unexpectedly. Clara's company, which specialized in innovative fintech solutions for underbanked communities, landed a critical investor pitch that could change the trajectory of the business. It was a high-stakes opportunity, attracting attention from major players in the industry. The investor, a formidable figure named Malcolm Hayes, was notorious for being skeptical of newcomers, especially young entrepreneurs. Clara's team had prepared tirelessly, crafting financial projections, operational strategies, and a compelling narrative of social impact. Yet, doubts lingered, doubts she had encountered countless times before. Ethan, aware of his father's cynicism, quietly offered support. "You'll impress them," he said, one evening, as they reviewed the pitch deck together. Clara smiled, appreciating the faith, but she didn't need it to drive her. The night before the presentation, she barely slept, running through every scenario, every question the investors might ask, refining her answers until they were precise and confident. She knew that success here would not only validate her work, but also send a clear message to Richard, resilient and deserving of recognition. The day of the pitch arrived, and the atmosphere was charged with anticipation. Clara walked into the boardroom with her team, her posture poised and her mind sharp. Malcolm Hayes, a man whose reputation preceded him, scrutinized every detail with a critical eye. Questions came rapidly, testing not just the viability of the business, but also Clara's ability to lead under pressure. Each challenge was met with clarity, insight, and unwavering composure. By the end of the meeting, it was evident Clara had commanded respect. She had turned skepticism into admiration, leaving the investors not only convinced of the potential of her company, but genuinely impressed by her leadership. Ethan watched from the sidelines, his pride swelling. He had always known Clara was exceptional, but seeing her triumph in such a high-pressure environment confirmed what he had always felt. The investors' handshake was firm, their smiles genuine, and their commitment to funding the venture was enthusiastic. This was more than a business victory. It was a statement, one that would eventually reach Richard Langston in a way that no argument could ever replicate. Weeks passed, and the news of Clara's success reached Richard. At first, he dismissed it as exaggeration, assuming that Ethan's affection had clouded his judgment. But as the details became undeniable, press releases, media coverage, and the official investor announcement, Richard could no longer ignore the truth. Clara had not just survived the scrutiny, she had excelled. Her innovative solutions, strategic thinking, and leadership had won over some of the most discerning investors in the industry. For the first time, Richard was forced to confront the reality that he had misjudged her. Yet, Richard's ego made acknowledgement difficult. He didn't apologize outright, nor did he express admiration in a direct manner. Instead, his gestures were subtle, a nod during family dinners, a quiet acknowledgement of her accomplishments, a rare smile that betrayed the faintest hint of pride. Clara noticed, of course, but she chose not to dwell on it. Her focus remained on the future, on growing her company, and on building a life with Ethan, a life founded on mutual respect, determination, and love. Richard's doubt had been a challenge, but it was one that Clara had met and overcome with grace, intelligence, and an unyielding spirit. In the months that followed, Clara's reputation soared. Her company became a model for innovation, inspiring other young entrepreneurs, particularly women, to pursue their ambitions relentlessly. Richard, initially skeptical, began to see the impact of her work not as a threat, but as a testament to her capabilities. The man who once doubted her now found himself quietly admiring the determination and brilliance he had underestimated. It was a subtle transformation, but a meaningful one that marked the beginning of a shift not just in perception, but in respect and understanding. And yet, the story was far from over. The challenges ahead would test not only Clara's abilities, but also the bond between Ethan and his father. The seeds of doubt had not entirely vanished. They had simply evolved. But Clara had learned a valuable lesson early in life, that proving one's worth was less about convincing skeptics with words and more about demonstrating excellence through action. And with every victory, no matter how small, she inched closer to the ultimate goal, turning doubt into respect and skepticism into unwavering support. The next challenge came sooner than anyone expected. Clara's fintech company, now attracting major investors, was approached by a global bank interested in a partnership. The opportunity was massive, a chance to expand internationally, gain credibility, and secure a multi-million-dollar contract. But it wasn't without risks. The bank had strict requirements demanding transparency, compliance, and efficiency that tested every aspect of Clara's operation. She knew that missteps could cost the company everything she had built. Yet, the stakes invigorated her. Ethan, ever supportive, stood by her side. "This is the moment to show them who you are," he told her one morning as they reviewed the bank's requirements. Clara smiled faintly, appreciating his encouragement, though she needed no reminders. Her team, handpicked for their expertise and dedication, shared her drive. They spent long nights analyzing reports, simulating market responses, and ensuring that every detail met the bank's exacting standards. Clara's ability to inspire her team under pressure was one of her greatest strengths. She didn't just lead. She empowered others to perform at their best. Meanwhile, Richard Langston watched from a distance, unable to contain a mixture of skepticism and curiosity. He couldn't deny that Clara's previous success had elevated her profile. Yet he remained hesitant to believe that she could manage something so complex at a global scale. Each phone call Ethan made to discuss updates seemed to Richard like a subtle affirmation of his own doubts, or so he thought. He was a man who prided himself on recognizing talent, but Clara challenged every preconceived notion he had about what it meant to be capable. The negotiations with the bank were grueling. Clara presented projections, compliance strategies, and contingency plans. The executives pressed her relentlessly, questioning assumptions, probing for weaknesses. Each session required meticulous preparation and unwavering confidence. Clara faced their scrutiny with poise, addressing every concern with logic and data, and demonstrating a level of insight that impressed even the most critical members of the board. She remained calm when others faltered, turning skepticism into acknowledgement with subtle but undeniable authority. Ethan watched, breath held, as Clara navigated the negotiations. Her composure was impeccable, her strategic thinking sharp, and her charisma undeniable. By the final meeting, it was clear that the bank had been won over. They offered terms favorable to her company, recognizing not only its potential but also Clara's extraordinary leadership. This victory was monumental, a milestone that confirmed Clara's ability to operate at the highest levels of business. For Ethan, it was deeply personal, a validation of his unwavering belief in her. Richard, hearing of the deal through second-hand reports, struggled with conflicting emotions. Pride battled stubbornness. He wanted to dismiss it as luck or exaggeration, yet every detail he verified reinforced the reality. Clara had achieved what he had doubted possible. He couldn't openly admiration that would compromise the rigid persona he had carefully cultivated, but inwardly, he began to recalibrate his understanding of her. The woman he had once underestimated was proving herself on a scale he had never imagined. Clara, however, paid little attention to Richard's shifting perceptions. Focus remained on growth, innovation, and sustainability. She knew that proving herself wasn't about changing her father-in-law's opinion. It was about securing a future that reflected her vision, hard work, and principles. Her days were filled with strategy sessions, investor meetings, and mentoring her team, while her nights often ended in Ethan's comforting presence, a reminder that she was not alone in her journey. Despite the high-pressure environment, Clara maintained a balance. She nurtured relationships, supported her employees, and stayed grounded in her values. She understood that success wasn't only about numbers and contracts. It was about trust, integrity, and respect. Her team responded in kind, inspired not just by her intelligence, but by her unwavering commitment to fairness and vision. Together, they built more than a company. They built a culture that reflected Clara's principles and empowered everyone involved. Weeks turned into months, and Clara's company began to attract international attention. Media outlets highlighted her innovative approach, her strategic foresight, and her ability to disrupt traditional financial models. Profiles described her as a visionary leader, someone whose achievements transcended industry norms. Richard could no longer ignore the accolades. Each article, interview, and recognition further eroded his skepticism. Clara's impact was undeniable, not just on business, but on the perception of what young, ambitious women could achieve. One evening, as Ethan and Clara celebrated a particularly significant milestone with their team, Richard appeared unannounced. The gathering, filled with laughter, presentations, and shared excitement, suddenly quieted as he entered the room. There was tension in the air, a lingering question. What would he say? For a moment, Clara observed him silently, assessing his expression. There was no hostility, but a subtle shift, a measured acknowledgement of what she had accomplished. "I didn't think it was possible," Richard said quietly, almost to himself, yet loud enough for Clara to hear. "I underestimated you." The words were simple, but their weight was profound. It wasn't an apology, nor a compliment in the conventional sense, but it carried the unmistakable mark of recognition. Clara nodded politely, her calm demeanor unchanged, understanding that sometimes victories speak louder than words. Ethan's smile was radiant, a reflection of pride in both Clara's achievements and the subtle reconciliation unfolding before them. That night, as they walked home together, Ethan squeezed Clara's hand. "You did it. You showed him." Clara smiled softly, knowing that while some battles required confrontation, the most powerful victories often came from action, persistence, and resilience. Richard's doubt, though lingering in pockets of hesitation, had been confronted and dismantled, not through argument or confrontation, but through Clara's brilliance, perseverance, and unwavering belief in herself. And yet, the journey was far from over. Bigger challenges loomed, not just in business, but in the family dynamics that Clara now navigated with poise. Richard's doubt had evolved into cautious respect, but history had taught Clara that approval was not a destination. It was a continuous process, built one triumph at a time. She embraced the path ahead with determination, ready to prove once again that capability, courage, and vision could overcome skepticism, no matter how deeply entrenched. The momentum Clara had built with her fintech company was undeniable. Yet, with success came scrutiny, envy, and unforeseen challenges. One morning, as she arrived at the office, her assistant handed her a stack of emails flagged urgent. One of the largest clients she had been negotiating with had expressed concerns over regulatory compliance and threatened to pull out unless she could address their issues immediately. Clara's pulse quickened, not from fear, but from the knowledge that this was another opportunity to prove her skill and leadership. Ethan noticed the tension as soon as he stepped into the office. "You've handled worse," he reminded her gently, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Clara nodded, grateful, but she didn't need reassurance. She had prepared for moments like this. She called an emergency meeting with her compliance and operations teams. Within the hour, they dissected every concern, outlined solutions, and developed a strategy to respond with precision. Clara's clarity and decisiveness under pressure inspired confidence in everyone around her, transforming anxiety into focused action. Meanwhile, Richard Langston observed the unfolding situation from afar. He had begun attending some of the board meetings at Ethan's insistence, ostensibly to offer guidance, but in reality, he was curious and perhaps a little reluctant to see Clara navigate challenges. He watched as she articulated complex solutions, negotiated terms diplomatically yet firmly, and ensured the client felt heard and valued. Even he could not deny her competence. Each word, each calculated decision was a testament to the leadership he had once doubted. The client meeting was intense. Executives grilled Clara with questions that tested not only the legality and logistics of her proposals, but also her strategic foresight. At times, the room was silent, as if everyone held their breath, waiting to see how she would respond. Clara addressed every concern with unwavering composure, presenting evidence, contingency plans, and actionable solutions. By the end of the meeting, the client's skepticism had melted into confidence. They agreed to proceed, impressed by Clara's thoroughness and professionalism. Ethan exhaled deeply when they stepped outside. "You did it again," he said, relief evident in his voice. Clara smiled faintly, her mind already shifting to the next challenge. She had learned early in life that success was not a destination, but a series of calculated responses to obstacles. Every achievement, every victory was a step forward, but the journey demanded constant vigilance, adaptability, and courage. Despite these professional triumphs, Clara also had to navigate the delicate dynamics with Richard. While he had started to acknowledge her capabilities, his approval was tentative, often masked by pride and his need to maintain authority. Family dinners, once tense and uncomfortable, began to shift subtly. Richard's remarks were less dismissive, his questions more curious, and his tone less condescending. Yet there were moments when his skepticism resurfaced, a reminder that change was gradual, not instantaneous. Clara accepted it with grace, choosing patience and strategic action over confrontation. As her company's reputation grew, Clara attracted offers from prominent investors and tech leaders who recognized her talent. Each offer came with new responsibilities, high expectations, and complex negotiations. Clara navigated these waters with careful consideration, ensuring that every decision aligned with her vision and values. Her team marveled at her ability to remain grounded amidst success, her humility paired with confidence, making her a natural leader. Ethan, observing her, felt a mix of admiration and relief. The woman he loved was proving herself in ways that extended beyond his imagination. One evening, a particularly difficult investor requested a private meeting with Clara. The discussion revolved around a potential expansion into international markets, a venture with enormous potential, but also immense risk. Clara spent hours preparing, analyzing market data, and developing a comprehensive strategy that accounted for every possible scenario. When the meeting commenced, she presented her plan with clarity, addressing concerns and highlighting long-term benefits. By the end, the investor was not only convinced but enthusiastic about the partnership. Richard, who had accompanied Ethan to observe the discussion, remained silent, processing what he had witnessed. Clara's ability to command attention, anticipate challenges, and lead with both intellect and empathy was undeniable. In private moments later, he admitted, quietly to himself, that he had misjudged her. Not only had she proven capable of extraordinary achievements, but she had done so while maintaining integrity, respect for her team, and grace under pressure. Clara's success began to ripple beyond business. Her achievements inspired young professionals in her community, particularly women, to pursue ambitious goals without hesitation. She became a symbol of resilience, proving that determination, intelligence, and courage could overcome doubt, prejudice, and skepticism. Richard, observing this impact, began to realize that his earlier dismissiveness was rooted in bias, and that Clara's example challenged him to reconsider his own perceptions. Despite the growing recognition, Clara remained focused on her priorities. She continued to mentor her team, develop new products, and plan strategic growth. She and Ethan also worked to strengthen their personal relationship, understanding that balancing work and life required deliberate effort. In quiet moments, they discussed future plans, not just for business, but for family, legacy, and the life they wanted to build together. Clara's vision extended beyond immediate success. She aspired to create lasting impact both in business and in the world around her. Then, an unexpected opportunity arose. A prestigious innovation award recognized companies that demonstrated both financial success and social impact. Clara's company was nominated, and the announcement coincided with a major public event. The press coverage was intense, with journalists, industry leaders, and competitors watching closely. Clara prepared meticulously for the ceremony, ensuring that her speech, presentation, and public demeanor reflected not only her accomplishments, but her values and mission. The award ceremony was a turning point. Clara stood on stage, delivering a speech that was both inspiring and heartfelt. She spoke of perseverance, resilience, and the importance of believing in one's vision despite doubt or adversity. As the audience erupted in applause, Richard watched silently, a mix of pride, humility, and realization washing over him. In that moment, the man who had once doubted her understood fully that Clara's achievements were not mere chance, courage, and unyielding determination. For Ethan, witnessing this acknowledgement from his father was deeply moving. He had believed in Clara from the start, but seeing her triumph on such a public stage and receiving recognition from Richard reinforced the truth he had known all along. Clara was extraordinary, and nothing, not skepticism, doubt, or prejudice, could diminish her brilliance. Clara's success, while celebrated publicly, also attracted hidden challenges. One morning, an email arrived that sent a ripple of tension through her office. A competitor had launched a smear campaign, questioning her company's financial integrity and attempting to undermine investor confidence. The accusations were false, but the timing was strategic, designed to destabilize her and cast doubt on her accomplishments. Clara recognized immediately that this was a test, not just of her business acumen, but of her resilience, composure, and ability to protect everything she had built. Ethan, sensing her frustration, stayed close. "You've overcome tougher obstacles," he reminded her quietly. Clara appreciated the reassurance, though she didn't rely on it. Her mind went to work, mapping out a comprehensive response. She gathered her legal team, financial officers, and communications experts to analyze the claims and develop a plan to refute them decisively. Clara knew that half measures would not suffice. This was a moment where precision, strategy, and assertiveness were crucial. The first step was transparency. Clara instructed her team to release a detailed financial report, verified by independent auditors, demonstrating the company's integrity and accountability. Simultaneously, she scheduled interviews with major media outlets to clarify the situation publicly, ensuring that investors, clients, and the wider business community received the truth directly from her. Her approach was proactive, confident, and unyielding, demonstrating that she refused to let baseless attacks derail her progress. Richard, observing the situation from the sidelines, felt a mixture of concern and admiration. He had never witnessed anyone confront such a targeted attack with this level of calm and strategic thinking. Clara was not just reacting. She was controlling the narrative, turning a potential crisis into an opportunity to reinforce her credibility and strength. It was a demonstration of leadership that no words or arguments could convey. One that left an impression even on a man who had doubted her from the start. In the days that followed, Clara's response proved effective. Media coverage highlighted her decisive action, her transparency, and the thoroughness of her financial management. Investors expressed renewed confidence, and the competitor's campaign backfired, causing more damage to their own reputation than to hers. Clara had not only weathered the storm, but emerged stronger, earning further respect from peers, investors, and even her father-in-law. Despite the professional victory, Clara's personal life faced its own tests. Richard, still adjusting to his changing perception of her, struggled to reconcile pride with his long-held biases. He occasionally slipped into critical remarks, though softer than before, and sometimes questioned decisions that he would have previously dismissed outright. Clara, understanding the complexity of family dynamics, chose patience and diplomacy, addressing concerns without confrontation and letting her achievements continue to speak louder than any argument. One evening, Richard invited Clara for a private conversation. The air was tense as she entered the study, unsure of what to expect. To her surprise, Richard was candid. "I underestimated you," he admitted, his tone uncharacteristically sincere. "Not just your abilities, but your resolve. I've realized that I was wrong to doubt you." Clara acknowledged the statement with a polite smile, recognizing that true respect often came gradually, through observation and experience rather than declarations. Ethan, standing nearby, felt a quiet sense of relief. Clara's company continued to expand. New partnerships, product launches, and international collaborations kept her constantly engaged. Yet, she maintained balance, mentoring her team, nurturing her relationship with Ethan, and staying grounded in her values. Her ability to juggle complex responsibilities while remaining composed and empathetic was remarkable. Observers began to note her not just as a successful entrepreneur, but as a role model for leadership defined by intelligence, integrity, and resilience. Then, an unexpected challenge emerged. A critical software issue threatened to disrupt one of the company's major platforms, potentially affecting thousands of clients worldwide. The problem was technical, complicated, and time-sensitive. Clara quickly assembled her top engineers and technical advisors, diving into the issue with relentless focus. Late nights and long hours followed as solutions were tested, refined, and implemented. Clara remained a steady presence, guiding her team with clarity, encouragement, and decisive action, ensuring that panic never overshadowed productivity. Richard, once doubtful of her technical and strategic skills, watched closely. He witnessed her ability to analyze problems, delegate effectively, and maintain composure under pressure. The software crisis was resolved efficiently. Clients were reassured, and the platform continued operating without disruption. Clara's handling of the situation further reinforced the reality that her capabilities extended far beyond the initial impression her father-in-law had formed. Through these trials, Ethan and Clara's bond strengthened. They celebrated victories together, strategized through challenges, coached one another through moments of doubt and fatigue. Their relationship was a partnership built on mutual respect, trust, and shared vision. Clara had not only earned Ethan's unwavering belief, but was slowly winning over the man who had once doubted her so profoundly. As the months passed, Clara's reputation solidified. Industry awards, media recognition, and investor confidence all reflected her accomplishments. She was no longer just the woman Ethan loved. She was a formidable leader whose influence and achievements were undeniable. Richard, though still grappling with his pride, found himself offering advice, support, and occasional praise. The transformation was subtle but meaningful. The man who had doubted her now recognized her talent and tenacity. Yet Clara knew the journey was far from complete. Success brought new responsibilities, higher stakes, and greater expectations. Challenges would continue to test her intellect, resilience, and character. But she had learned that the key to overcoming doubt, whether from outsiders or family, was unwavering belief in oneself, meticulous preparation, and the courage to act decisively. Richard's initial skepticism had become a backdrop, a foil against which her brilliance shone even brighter. And so, Clara continued her journey, ready to face every challenge, seize every opportunity, and prove through action, persistence, and extraordinary skill that doubt could be overcome. Respect could be earned, and true capability would always rise above prejudice. Just when Clara thought she had navigated every foreseeable challenge, a crisis erupted that shook both her company and her personal life. A high-profile, investigative journalist published an expose questioning the ethical practices of her fintech company. The article implied that her rapid growth and impressive partnerships might have involved questionable financial maneuvers, and that her leadership decisions had favored profit over a client's welfare. The piece was sensational, spreading quickly across social media and triggering debates among investors, clients, and industry peers. Clara read the article with a calm, analytical focus. Panic was a luxury she couldn't afford. She immediately gathered her executive team to dissect the claims and develop a strategic response. Every detail in the expose was examined meticulously, sources checked, data verified, and statements prepared. Clara understood that the public's perception could be swayed, and her response had to be swift, accurate, and transparent. There was no room for hesitation or defensiveness. The situation demanded leadership under pressure, and Clara was determined to rise to the occasion. Ethan, sensing the tension, stayed close, offering silent support. "You've faced worse, and you've always come out stronger," he reminded her quietly, his voice steady. Clara nodded, appreciating his presence, though she drew her primary strength from experience and preparation rather than reassurance. Her team, inspired by her composure, worked tirelessly through the night to craft public statements, prepare interviews, and schedule meetings with concerned investors. Clara led with clarity and authority, turning potential chaos into coordinated action. Richard, learning of the controversy, was initially skeptical about how Clara would handle it. His instinct was protective, yet also critical, a lingering shadow of the doubt he had long carried. He attended the emergency board meeting, ostensibly to observe, but secretly unsure if Clara could maintain her composure under the intense scrutiny. He expected defensiveness, tension, maybe even mistakes. What he witnessed, instead, stunned him. Clara was meticulous, transparent, and poised. She presented facts with precision, addressed concerns directly, and maintained an unwavering calm that inspired confidence in her team and stakeholders alike. Media interviews became a critical battleground. Clara faced reporters eager for sensational soundbites, probing for weaknesses, and testing her credibility. She answered every question with honesty, clarity, and strategic foresight. Instead of reacting emotionally, she focused on the facts, explained complex processes in accessible terms, and highlighted her company's commitment to ethical practices and social impact. Slowly, the narrative began to shift. The story transformed from a sensational attack to a testament of transparency, accountability, and leadership under pressure. Investors watched closely. Some had reservations, but Clara's methodical approach, combined with the independent audits she commissioned, reassured them that the company's operations were sound. By the end of the week, the initial backlash had transformed into renewed confidence, with some investors praising her for her leadership and the clarity of her response. Clara had turned what could have been a catastrophic setback into a demonstration of intelligence and resilience. Richard, witnessing this transformation firsthand, felt a profound shift within himself. The woman he had once doubted, dismissed as inexperienced or naive, was now navigating a public storm with authority, composure, and skill that surpassed most of the men he had worked with over his decades-long career. His skepticism, once unyielding, gave way to grudging admiration. He began to see Clara not just as Ethan's partner, but as an extraordinary leader in her own right, capable of weathering crises that would intimidate even seasoned executives. In the midst of this turmoil, Clara's personal life intersected with her professional challenges. Family dynamics became more pronounced as relatives weighed in with opinions, and Richard occasionally overstepped in ways that tested her patience. Yet Clara approached these interactions with diplomacy and composure. She listened, acknowledged concerns where appropriate, and subtly guided conversations to maintain respect and balance. Her ability to navigate both public and private scrutiny simultaneously demonstrated a depth of maturity and intelligence that few could match. One evening, after a long day of media appearances and investor calls, Clara and Ethan sat quietly in their apartment. The city lights glittered below them, a reminder of the world they had both fought to navigate. "You've handled everything with so much grace," Ethan said softly. "It's not about proving him wrong with words," she replied. "It's about showing him and the world what I'm capable of through action." Ethan squeezed her hand, proud not only of her accomplishments, but of her wisdom in handling skepticism without losing composure. Weeks passed, and the controversy gradually subsided. Clara's transparency and proactive communication turned potential disaster into a case study of effective crisis management. Investors reaffirmed their commitments, media narratives shifted in her favor, and the company's reputation emerged stronger than before. Clara had not only survived public scrutiny, but had enhanced her credibility, demonstrating that true leadership was tested not in calm times, but in moments of pressure and adversity. Richard, once doubting her capabilities, had transformed in his perception. He no longer viewed Clara merely as Ethan's fiancée or a young entrepreneur. He saw her as a formidable force, a leader whose intelligence, integrity, and resilience commanded respect. While he still struggled with pride and occasionally expressed his thoughts cautiously, his admiration was genuine. Clara had proven unequivocally that skepticism could be met with excellence, and doubt could be overcome with unwavering competence. Yet Clara knew that challenges were never truly finished. Every achievement, every victory, and every crisis overcome was a stepping stone, not a destination. Her focus remained on growth, sustainability, and the impact she wanted to leave on the industry and the world. Richard's acceptance, while meaningful, was secondary to the larger purpose that had always driven her: creating, leading, and inspiring with courage, intelligence, and integrity. As Clara prepared for the next phase of her company's expansion, she understood one truth more than ever: proving oneself isn't about changing others' minds through argument. It's about demonstrating capability, resilience, and vision consistently over time. Richard's doubt had been a catalyst, but her victories were the result of her own skill, determination, and unwavering commitment to excellence. And with every challenge she met, she drew closer to a reality where skepticism was replaced not with praise alone, but with undeniable respect. With the controversy behind her, Clara turned her focus to the most ambitious phase of her career yet: international expansion. She had identified several emerging markets where her fintech solutions could transform access to banking for underserved populations. The opportunity was enormous, but the stakes were higher than ever. Regulatory frameworks, cultural differences, and intense competition presented challenges she had never faced before. Every decision carried the potential for both massive success and significant risk. Ethan, ever her partner in both life and strategy, provided steady support. "You've handled every obstacle so far," he said one morning, reviewing market analyses with her. "This is just another one, bigger maybe, but you've got this." Clara smiled, appreciating his confidence, though she had no illusions about the difficulty ahead. Preparation was everything. She spent weeks immersing herself in the details of each market, learning local regulations, analyzing competitors, and developing strategies that were both ethical and profitable. Her approach was meticulous. There was no room for error. Richard Langston, now observing Clara with more genuine respect than skepticism, remained cautiously intrigued. He joined several planning meetings, ostensibly to provide guidance, but in truth, he was testing himself and Clara. Could she navigate international complexities as deftly as she had handled domestic challenges? Could she maintain her principles under pressure, especially with the eyes of investors, media, and competitors upon her? Every action she took was a subtle demonstration of skill that Richard could not ignore. The launch in the first overseas market was a critical test. Clara coordinated logistics, legal compliance, and marketing strategies with precision. Her team worked tirelessly, inspired by her leadership. When the product finally went live, she monitored feedback in real time, responding to issues with calm, strategic problem-solving. A technical glitch threatened to derail the launch, but Clara addressed it immediately, coordinating engineers and local partners to fix the problem before it escalated. By the end of the day, the rollout was considered a success, and early user adoption exceeded projections. Ethan was visibly impressed, though he never doubted her abilities. Richard, on the other hand, sat quietly in the background, analyzing every move. The man who had once questioned her competence now recognized that Clara was not only capable, but extraordinary. He had been wrong, profoundly wrong, to underestimate her, and the evidence was undeniable. Clara's leadership, intelligence, and poise had turned doubt into respect, skepticism into admiration. Yet his pride delayed full acknowledgement. He still struggled to express the depth of his admiration openly. As the company expanded into additional markets, Clara faced new pressures, high-stakes negotiations with international investors, complex regulatory challenges, and cultural nuances that required adaptability. Each success further solidified her reputation as a visionary leader. She had become a figure of inspiration, not only for her employees and investors, but also for aspiring entrepreneurs, particularly women in industries historically dominated by men. Her achievements were changing perceptions and redefining what was possible. The personal side of her life evolved as well. Ethan and Clara's relationship deepened under the shared intensity of ambition and challenge. They celebrated milestones together, strategized through obstacles, and supported one another through moments of stress. Clara had also developed a new sense of patience with Richard. She understood that respect and trust were earned over time, and she allowed her consistent excellence to reshape his perceptions naturally. One evening, after a successful expansion meeting in London, Richard requested a private conversation with Clara. There was a quiet intensity in his expression as they sat together in a hotel lounge. "I have to admit," he began, his tone unusually earnest, "I doubted you from the start. I thought your ambition would outweigh your capability. That experience mattered more than drive." I was wrong. Clara listened silently, aware that this acknowledgement, though brief, was significant. It was the culmination of years of perseverance, intelligence, and courage. Clara responded with calm humility. "It's not about proving anyone wrong," she said softly. "It's about proving to yourself that you can do what you set out to do. Recognition from others is secondary." Richard nodded slowly, understanding the truth in her words. For the first time, he saw Clara not as someone to doubt, but as a force of her own right, capable, brilliant, and resilient. Ethan, who had joined them for dinner later, felt a deep sense of relief and pride. Clara had not only earned his father's respect, but had done so through extraordinary skill and integrity. The global expansion continued, and Clara's company thrived. Media attention, awards, and industry recognition followed, establishing her as a leader of international renown. Investors sought her guidance, competitors watched her strategies closely, and her employees found inspiration in her vision. Every success reinforced the reality that doubt could be met with excellence. Skepticism could be overcome with perseverance, and respect could be earned through consistent, intelligent action. Yet, even as her company flourished, Clara remained focused on what truly mattered: ethical leadership, social impact, and fostering an environment where talent could thrive. She understood that achievements, while impressive, were not an end in themselves. They were a platform to make a difference, inspire others, and set a standard of integrity in every interaction. Richard's earlier doubt had become a catalyst, a backdrop against which her brilliance shone even brighter. As Part 6 closed, Clara prepared for what would become the ultimate test of her vision and resilience. A global summit bringing together industry leaders, investors, and policymakers, where her company's model would face the scrutiny of the world. Success here would not only cement her legacy, but also fully demonstrate to Richard and everyone else that she was not just capable, she was extraordinary. The stage was set for a defining moment where talent, strategy, and courage would converge, and where Clara would prove, once again, that doubt could be transformed into admiration through sheer excellence. The Global Summit was the moment Clara had anticipated for months. Industry leaders, investors, policymakers, and media from around the world had gathered to discuss innovation, financial inclusion, and emerging technologies. For Clara, it was more than a platform to showcase her company's success. It was a proving ground where her vision, strategy, and leadership would be scrutinized by the most discerning minds in the world. The stakes were immense, and the pressure was unlike anything she had experienced before. Ethan stayed by her side throughout the preparation. "You've done everything to get here," he said calmly as they reviewed her presentation one last time. "This is your moment to show them everything you're capable of." Clara nodded, feeling the familiar blend of excitement and responsibility. She had built her company from the ground up, faced skepticism, managed crises, and expanded into international markets. Every challenge had prepared her for this stage. Now, all eyes would be on her, and she was ready. The summit hall was massive, filled with influential figures whose opinions could shape the trajectory of Clara's company and its global impact. Cameras flashed, voices murmured, and the air was charged with expectation. Clara stepped onto the stage with confidence, her posture poised and her expression composed. She began her presentation articulating the mission of her company, the innovative solutions they had developed, and the measurable social impact they had achieved. Every slide, every word, and every statistic was delivered with precision, clarity, and undeniable authority. Questions came swiftly from the audience, each more challenging than the last. Competitors attempted to probe weaknesses, investors scrutinized projections, and policymakers questioned the feasibility of implementing her model in diverse economic environments. Clara addressed every question with careful reasoning, factual evidence, and strategic insight. She turned potential criticisms into opportunities to demonstrate her expertise and vision, earning nods of approval and impressed murmurs throughout the room. Richard, seated near the front, watched intently. His heart raced as he observed Clara navigate the scrutiny with grace and skill. The man who had once doubted her abilities now realized that she was not just capable, she was exceptional. Every response she gave, every challenge she met, reinforced a truth he could no longer deny. Clara's brilliance was undeniable, and her achievements were the result of intelligence, resilience, and relentless dedication. During the final segment, Clara shared a vision for the future, expanding financial access to underserved populations in remote regions, leveraging technology ethically, and creating sustainable models that balanced profit with social responsibility. She outlined concrete plans, timelines, and measurable goals, demonstrating foresight and strategic thinking that captivated the audience. Investors leaned forward, policymakers took notes, and media outlets captured her every word. The summit, which had begun with high expectations, now seemed to center around Clara's remarkable leadership. As the session concluded, applause erupted throughout the hall. Standing ovations followed, not only for the success of her company, but for Clara herself, the leader who had turned doubt into undeniable achievement. Richard felt a mix of pride, awe, and humility. The journey from skepticism to respect had been long, but now it was complete. He approached Clara after the summit, his expression uncharacteristically open. "I underestimated you," he admitted, his voice quiet but sincere. "You've proven me completely wrong. I couldn't be prouder." Clara smiled, acknowledging his words without arrogance. "Thank you," she replied softly. "But this isn't about proving anyone wrong. It's about doing what's right, building what matters, and leading with integrity." Richard nodded, understanding the depth of her statement. This moment marked not just professional triumph, but personal reconciliation. The man who had doubted her now stood beside her in full recognition of her extraordinary abilities. The summit's success catapulted Clara's company to new heights. International partnerships were solidified. Media coverage portrayed her as a visionary leader, and investors expanded their support. Her reputation as a strategist, innovator, and ethical leader became global, inspiring countless others who had faced skepticism or doubt. Clara had demonstrated that true excellence could overcome prejudice, and that persistent, principled action could transform doubt into respect. Ethan, standing beside her as celebrations unfolded, felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude and pride. Clara's journey had been arduous, but every step every challenge, and every victory had reinforced what he had always known. She was extraordinary. The summit had been the ultimate test, and she had passed not only with competence, but with brilliance that resonated far beyond the room, touching everyone who witnessed it. Later that evening, the family gathered to celebrate. Richard, now fully recognizing Clara's achievements, spoke openly and proudly. "I was wrong about you from the very beginning," he admitted, his voice steady and sincere. "You've exceeded every expectation, and more importantly, you've done it with integrity and courage. I respect you deeply." Clara felt a profound sense of fulfillment. Years of perseverance, resilience, and dedication had culminated in this acknowledgement, not just from the world, but from the one person whose doubt had once been most daunting. As the night drew to a close, Clara reflected on her journey. Every challenge she had faced, from skepticism, criticism, and crisis, had strengthened her, refined her abilities, and proven that doubt could be transformed through action, excellence, and unwavering conviction. Richard's doubt had been a crucible, testing her resolve and resilience, but it had also provided the stage for her brilliance to shine. In the end, she had proven, not through argument, but through extraordinary achievement, that capability, intelligence, and courage could overcome even the deepest skepticism. The summit was more than a milestone. It was a testament. Clara's journey showed that perseverance, vision, and ethical leadership could transform doubt into respect, and that one person's belief in themselves could change the minds of even the most doubtful critics. Ethan squeezed her hand gently, and she smiled, knowing that the road ahead, while challenging, was full of limitless possibilities. Clara's story had become one of triumph over doubt, brilliance under pressure, and the power of unwavering determination. In the weeks following the global summit, Clara's company experienced unprecedented growth. Partnerships solidified. Media coverage continued to celebrate her leadership, and investors eagerly committed to new initiatives. But more importantly, Clara had earned something far more valuable than accolades: the unequivocal respect of her father-in-law. Richard, who had once doubted her every move, now openly admired her brilliance, integrity, and relentless perseverance. His skepticism had transformed into pride, and that acknowledgement, though long overdue, was deeply meaningful to Clara. Ethan watched the dynamic between Clara and his father with quiet satisfaction. He had always believed in her, but seeing Richard embrace her achievements fully brought him immense relief. Clara, however, had never sought validation from Richard. Her focus had always been on creating something remarkable, building a life grounded in principles, and inspiring others. Still, the resolution of this tension brought a sense of closure that allowed her to focus entirely on the future she was crafting alongside Ethan. The company faced its next challenge: scaling operations while maintaining quality and ethical standards across multiple countries. Clara implemented rigorous oversight, trained local teams, and developed systems that ensured consistency without stifling innovation. Her leadership style, a combination of vision, empathy, and strategic thinking, became the benchmark for her entire organization. Employees felt empowered and respected. Clients trusted her decisions, and investors recognized her ability to navigate complexity with poise. Clara had not only proven herself to skeptics, she had become a standard-bearer for excellence. Richard became increasingly involved, offering guidance without criticism, supporting her initiatives, and occasionally marveling at her abilities. He began sharing her achievements with colleagues, friends, and associates, speaking proudly of the woman he had once doubted. The transformation was remarkable. A man who had dismissed her potential now celebrated it, acknowledging her strategic insight, her unwavering determination, and the impact she had created. Clara noticed, but she never let it alter her focus. She understood that true respect was earned, and she had earned it decisively. Ethan and Clara also found time to nurture their personal lives. They planned for the future, not just in business, but in family, legacy, and community impact. Their partnership was strengthened by shared challenges, victories, and a deep understanding of one another's strengths. Clara knew that success was meaningless if it came at the expense of connection. And she invested just as much in her relationships as she did in her company. One evening, the family gathered for dinner, a rare occasion where the demands of business and public attention took a back seat. Richard raised a glass to Clara, his voice steady and sincere. "I have been wrong about you in more ways than I can count," he said. "Your vision, your intelligence, your courage, I underestimated all of it. I see now what Ethan has always known. You are remarkable." Clara smiled warmly, appreciating the acknowledgement not for its own sake, but for the culmination of years of perseverance and dedication. Clara reflected quietly on her journey. She had faced doubt, skepticism, public scrutiny, and personal challenges. Each obstacle had been an opportunity to demonstrate her capability, each criticism a chance to refine her strategy and vision. Richard's doubt, once a source of tension, had become a lens through which her brilliance shone even more brightly. She had proven, through action rather than argument, that talent, determination, and integrity could overcome prejudice and uncertainty. The company continued to expand. Now, a global leader in ethical fintech solutions, Clara's influence extended beyond business. She became a mentor, advocate, and inspiration to countless aspiring leaders, particularly women navigating industries traditionally dominated by men. Her story was one of resilience, vision, and unwavering commitment to excellence. Every decision she made, every challenge she overcame, reinforced the truth that leadership was not merely about authority, but about integrity, intelligence, and the ability to inspire others. Richard, once the most formidable doubter, now stood fully in support of Clara. He recognized her achievements, celebrated her milestones, and even deferred to her judgment in matters where his own experience could have overshadowed her vision. The journey from doubt to respect had been long, but the transformation was complete. Clara had earned not only his admiration, but his trust, and in doing so, she had changed the very dynamic of their family. As Ethan and Clara sat together one evening, reflecting on the past years, he took her hand. "You've done more than prove him wrong," he said softly. "You've built something incredible, and you've inspired everyone around you. I'm so proud of you." Clara smiled, her heart full. "It wasn't about proving him wrong," she replied. "Everything else was a bonus." And with that, Clara looked toward the future. The world had witnessed her brilliance, her resilience, and her unwavering integrity. Richard had recognized her capabilities fully. Skeptics had been silenced by her achievements, and Ethan remained steadfast by her side. Clara's journey had been defined by action, perseverance, and the refusal to let doubt dictate her path. She had turned skepticism into admiration, challenges into triumphs, and dreams into a legacy. The story of Clara was no longer just about proving someone wrong. It was about showing the power of belief, vision, and unwavering determination. Richard's doubt had been a catalyst, but Clara's brilliance had done the rest. And as she prepared for the next chapter of her life and career, one truth remained undeniable. When talent, courage, and integrity converge, no doubt is insurmountable, and no skepticism can withstand the force of excellence.